The brand new Mariner class is finally here. I was finally able to test the Mariner on the Boulder early preview, and in this video we're going to look at the Red Line Mariner, which I think looked like the most fun and engaging line for the Mariner. Just a quick mention for all the trait lines that Mariner has. Blue line seems to be a buffing line, kind of like a red captain. Yellow seems to be a debuffing line, kind of like a yellow lore master. And red line is the Mariner's DPS line. Now, before looking at any traits or any skills, we're going to look at the attunement bar, also called a balance. As you can see, if I hover over the, let's call it the balance bar, you can see that balance shifts fore and aft, 25 out of 50. So in the middle here is 25, and then aft will take you backwards towards 1, and then afterwards is towards the left into the blue column, and 4 is to the right into the red. So toward the right side is more DPS focused skills, and to build towards the left is more buff and healing skills. And the base idea behind the class is that you don't want to go too far left and you don't want to go too far right. You want to stay balanced. And you can see the middle part here, that's green. This is steady. And then you can go aft, more towards the aft, and too far towards the aft. And you can go more towards the 4 and too far towards the 4. If you go too far towards the 4, you will get a debuff increasing your threat levels, giving you increased miss chance, and then you will get a 2-second stun. So you don't want to go too far forward. If you go too far aft, then you will get a slow, as well as a stun at the end of that effect. So you don't want to go too far aft as well. Now, before getting into Redline, we're going to look at the base Mariner skills that every line gets. As you can see, I am not spec'd into a trait line right now. The skills that you see here are the skills that are baseline for every class, every Mariner. Some of the skills might change depending on the line you spec into, and they might also give different buffs depending on your trait line. But we're going to take a look at the base skills. On the far right, we have the Sail 2 skills. There are 5 port skills that are given to you as a base. Sail to 5 different places. Now, we're not sure if you can bring your allies like a hunter or if it's just a single port for yourself, but I think it would make sense that if you sail, you take people with you on your boat. You can see the rest of the skills here. The colors that are prominent are red, blue, and yellow and green. And I would say in general for Mariner, the blue skills are more, let's call them defensive minded, so aftward. So skills that will be built afterwards. And the red line skills are generally DPS skills building for. And the green and yellow, so green is typically healing of some sort. And yellow skills are typically crowd control skills or any kind of debuffing skills. So we're going to take a look at these skills and what they do. You have Toss a Bottle, which is a 1-minute cooldown, a single target heal. So you can toss a bottle and heal yourself. The next skill is Fizzling Rocks. This is basically a frontal damaging skill, but also interrupts inductions. So anything in front of you, maximum 7 targets, can be interrupted as such. Sludge Pot is a ranged damaging skill that debuffs attack duration and skill inductions of the enemy. Belly of Brine is your cleanse, so you can cleanse the effects on yourself. Salt Cure is your corruption removal skill. Flick is your base interrupt skill. It's really fast, as you can see. Rummage is quite an interesting skill. When you use Rummage, there are 5 different skills that can pop up. You're basically rummaging in your haversack, and if I click it, you can see that I got the Rummage knife. If you use it, it's going to go on cooldown for a minute. You can also wait, and the skill will go back to Rummage. You can hit it again, it'll randomize. I got knife again, but if you don't use it for 10 seconds, it will go back to Rummage. You can hit it again. This time I got a different effect. So it's kind of random what you get. There's a few different heals and a few different stuns. And as you can see, a Rummage knife puts a bleed on your target. So Rummage is more of a fun skill rather than a practical skill, giving you a different effect depending on RNG. On the next line, we have the 2 toggle skills, the two stances you can be in. Shanty Steady Aft will give you pips over time towards the left, and Shanty Steady 4 will give you pips over time towards the right. So you can see if I apply Shanty Steady 4, my balance starts shifting slowly towards the 4. So these stances can be applied depending on if you want help to move towards 4 or aft. So these can be toggled to help with your balance. Sea Legs is your basic breakout skill. On the next line we have a skill called Recenter, and this skill will be activated after using a finisher skill. So after using a finisher skill you can use the Recenter, and this skill will basically take you back to the middle in the center. So if you are, let's say, far into the right, you use a finishing skill, and then you use a Recenter, you'll go right back to the middle. So a pretty useful skill to keep yourself balanced. We have a few blue skills that typically build towards aft. You'll notice that a lot of these skills have interactions with other skills. Like once you use a skill, there will be a 10-second duration with a buff, and that buff will apply for your next skill. So there's a lot of different combinations you can perform as a Mariner. I'm not going to go too far into the different combos in this video. This is more of a get a first look at the red Mariner, but we can take a look at the Blade Shield. Blade Shield is a swordplay skill that gives you parry chance and will increase riposte damage and step back damage reduction for your next skill if you decide to use those skills. As you can see, you get buffs on yourself. On guard gives you 5% run speed, restores some power, gives you 50% parry skill parry chance, and 100% thrust damage if you choose to use thrust next. You can also see that it requires you to have at most 6 towards aft, so if you're too far to the aft, you cannot use on guard. Step back gives you 25% partial evade chance and gives disengage a heal on the next attack, or riposte enraging the target on the next attack. The riposte enrage is simply an effect, just like the Loremaster can do with the Raven, where you force a ranged target to come into melee range. And disengage is your finisher towards the aft wards. It requires you to be at least 7 towards aft, and after using the finisher like we saw before, you can then use a Recenter. So disengage will increase your mitigations for 10 seconds and also give you a run speed buff. So it's kind of like a getaway skill if you're in trouble. On the next line we see all of the red skills that typically build toward the 4. We have the North Wind, which adds an attack duration debuff on your target and also deals damage. It's also an AoE damaging skill. Thrust deals damage and makes advance do 30% more damage on your next attack, or it can have step back partial evade chance increased by 50% chance. Riposte deals damage and makes advance deal 30% more damage if it is your next attack. Advance is a 2-attack skill, also increasing finisher skills damage by 50%, and also the dramatic flourish critical magnitude buff if you choose to use those skills as your next attack. Aggressive Strike is a damaging skill that gives disengage 10% more mitigations. So if you use this and then disengage, your mitigations will be then 20% of both. And finally we have the other base finisher other than disengage. We have Lunge, where you commit your momentum to a forward lunge, dealing damage with an increased chance to critically hit. So Lunge is your second finisher, and after using Lunge, you're able to recenter, taking your balance back to the middle. So with that in mind, those are your base skills. It's time to trade into Redline. Redline, the Duellist, weaves dramatic combinations of strikes to deal relentless damage. So this is the DPS line of the Mariner. Duelists are masters of single combat, relying on swordplay and footwork to face down their enemies head on. Skills earned is Feint. We're going to spec into Redline. You can see that we earned the skill called Feint. And take note that Feint is an immediate skill, and it's a damaging skill. And using Feint will buff your next skill to give dodge a heal. Cut over becomes AoE, and you get 15% compound attack critical chance. So we're going to start trading into Redline, and once we unlock the set bonuses, we will look at them one at a time. So starting from the top left, we have the lean forward trait. This basically increases your 4-state buff damage, and what this means is that when you're in the 4-state over here, you actually get a damage buff. We can take a look at it right now. Let me get into the 4-stat. Right there, I'm in 4 now, and you can take a look at my buff. Forward plus 15% melee damage. So this basically takes it up from 5% to 15%. And by putting 5 points into red, we unlock the first set bonus. Cut Over grants you the Cut Over skill. And as we can see, Cut Over is a damaging skill, and it buffs flesh to apply a wound on your next attack. We're going to keep trading into Redline. Deep Punctures gives you more damage over time pulses on your bleeds. Sharpened Blades gives your swordplay skills more damage. We now unlocked the next set bonus. Check Step. The focus on offense. You have learned to feign a step backward, luring your opponent in just as you step back and strike. Step back becomes check step. So if we take a look at our skills before I hit apply, you can see that step back is going to change when I hit apply. Step back turns into check step, and in addition to the previous effects, it now also gives 25% forward skills damage on your next attack. The top right trait in Redline is kind of controversial. It is a Duellist honor. You're most comfortable when fighting an opponent fairly face to face. For a Mariner, positional is achieved by being in front of an enemy. So Mariners actually get more damage if they stand in front of the enemies if they trait this. This seems to me more like a PvMP trait or a landscape questing trait. Not something you would pick for a raid probably. But of course, you're more than welcome to try to pick this if you're brave enough to stand in front of bosses in raids. But Mariners do get positional damage from standing in front if you trait a Duellist honor. This also unlocks our next trait set bonus, Relentless Advance. Compound Attack will quicken the recovery of your lunge. We don't have Compound Attack yet, but we'll get to that. But using Compound Attack will reduce the cooldown of your lunge skill. So the lunge is our finisher in Redline. Next trait, Tempered Steel, increases your melee skill critical chance by 5. This also unlocks our next set bonus, Between the Links. And this is basically 10% critical magnitude to our skills. Salt Sea Blade is probably a skill that any Mariner will take, even if you're blue or yellow. Salt Sea Blade decreases your enemy's tactical mitigations by 3% for 10 seconds, and the cooldown is 7 seconds. So 100% uptime on this debuff. Really strong skill, nice utility for a Mariner. Trading Dodge will give you another skill. Using Dodge will give you 25% evade chance for 5 seconds. And will buff your repulse damage by 50%. Repulse will get 50% crit chance, and Disengage will have plus 30% speed if you use this into those skills. The next trait set bonus is Follow Through. After an advance, you fully commit your weight and motion into a finishing strike, basically buffing your advance skill. Instead of 50% finisher skills damage, it will give 75% finisher skills damage if you use a finisher after advance. So advance into lunge, for example. The next trait is a Step Back, and this basically will alter your Step Back or Check Step skill. Right now you can see that Check Step attunes 1 towards aft, but if you trade all points into this, we can see that Check Step now attunes 4 towards aft. So you can trait this to increase the aft attunement of Check Step or Step Back. The next trait is Attacker's Advantage. Thrust into Advance will apply a bleed. So if you use a Thrust and then Advance, you will apply a bleed with Advance. Slashing Blade will reduce the cooldown of Advance and also make the skill AoE. Our next trait set bonus is Lightweight Blade, reducing the power cost of your skills and reducing your attack duration. You can see that Advance changed to Sweeping Advance and the cooldown is now shorter. Balance techniques increases the damage of your aftward skills, so any skills that attune towards the aft, such as the check step. And we can see that we unlocked our final set bonus, basically giving you the skill called Flesh. And Flesh is another finisher, meaning you'll have 2 finishers in the 4 category. So Flesh is an AoE finisher, maximum targets dealing big damage, while Lunge is a single target finisher. So Flesh is an alternative to Lunge as a finisher on the 4 side. The next trait is called the Biting North Wind, increasing the damage of the North Wind skill. Salted Wounds increases the potency of your damage over time skills, so your bleeds. And finally, we get to Compound Attack, giving you the Compound Attack skill. Compound Attack is a 3 attack skill, and it will buff your Lunge skill to apply a bleed if it is your next skill, and also decreases the cooldown of Lunge. Conclusive Strike will increase your finisher skill's damage for each point you put into it, and it also gives you the passive effect that on every swordplay critical hit, you get a plus 1% swordplay skills damage for 5 seconds. And the Test Defenses trait will increase the Test Defenses buff potency, so instead of 1%, it will be 2.5% if you fully trait this. And then we come down to the Capstone traits. These 2 traits at the bottom you cannot get to if you're yellow or blue. The first one is Double Time, and this Double Time trait will basically change your 4 stance, so the Shanty Steady 4 will change. I'm not exactly sure if this is working as intended right now, but it gets a 2-minute cooldown, and it basically acts as a DPS cooldown, increasing Pip's forward Shanty by a +1 every 1 second, and plus 20% melee damage, and also run speed. So as you can see, when I toggle this, you can see that this is just going to fly up, and my buff is going to keep ticking up until tier 5, which I believe is the max. And you can see that I get to way too far 4 way too soon, and I'm not exactly sure how this works, because you can see that I'm too far at the 4, but no bad things are really happening to me. This Double Time keeps refreshing and I keep this buff. So I don't know if this is just like a toggle skill where you just want to go all out DPS, or if it's not fully functioning properly yet, but this will increase your DPS, giving you the Double Time buff and basically pushing you way far to the 4. But it seems weird to me that you're not getting stunned or getting the debuff, so I'm not sure if this is properly hooked up yet. I feel like it would make sense that you would use this as a DPS cooldown when you feel like you want to push out some extra DPS, but that's how it works as of right now. And the final trait in red gives you the Confident Lunges. Flesh and Lunge will apply a bleed. So those are all your traits in red line. And when it comes to diving into the other trait lines, I'm not going to go too much into detail on that for now. I will do blue line and yellow line videos later, but it seems like the way to go for sure as red is to put most of your points into red, but you're going to have to drop something, because you definitely want to go down into blue all the way to the bottom left to get your Blooded Foes trait and the Marked Foes, because it gives incoming damage, AoE, pretty strong skill that you definitely want to get. Doesn't seem to be that much gain going into yellow, not really anything great there. There is an incoming damage 5% in yellow as well that you could go for, but blue just offers more good stuff for DPS. So you're definitely gonna go red and then deep into blue, giving you the Blooded Foes trait. So that's your first look at the Redline Mariner, and to me it looks like a really fun class to figure out and get good at. There's a lot of different interactions between the skills that you need to learn and figure out the best rotation. I think this class has great potential. All the lines look pretty good, but I would say red line is the line that caught my eye the most, that I think will be a lot of fun to play. I will of course be checking out blue and yellow Mariner in future videos, and probably gonna do some more in-depth videos in the future. But for now, this is the Redline Mariner. If you have any questions, be sure to drop them in the comments and I'll answer to the best of my ability. But for me, Mariner is a big thumbs up so far. Hey! Hey you! Yeah, you! What do you want? You enjoy my content and you want to support me? Fine, I'll show you how you can do it. I would really appreciate if you like the video and subscribe to my channel. You can also support me through my Ko-fi homepage. If you're playing or looking to play Lord of the Rings online, there is one place you need to be. The Ghyniverse is a Discord server created for the community of the players of Lord of the Rings Online. The server is getting close to 7,000 members, and in this server you'll find tons of helpful information. There's monthly giveaways, easy access to patch notes, you can keep up with my YouTube videos, my streams. If you're a streamer, you can ask for the streamer role and you can announce your streams in the other stream channel. There are discussion channels for pretty much everything, every class, monster players. But the best thing about this server is probably the Gearing Resources tab, where you can find anything from trait lines for every class, every build. There are stat goals, where you can find out what stats you should aim for on your characters. Really helpful information about drop rates from instances, as well as screenshot from all the new loot that appears in the game. If you enjoy LOTRO, you should definitely consider joining this server, and hopefully I'll see you in Middle-earth. If you were part of the Ghyniverse already, you might have noticed that another tab appeared at the top, the LFF server. This server is a brand new server that I created, the LFF Ghyniverse. In this server, you can select which servers you want to keep up with, and once you select your server, say you select Arkenstone, you will see the LFF, the kinship advertisement, looking for kinship and trade channels, and there's also voice channels if people want to use those. The LFF channel is basically a looking for fellowship channel where people can post if they need players for the runs, and this way people don't have to be logged into the game to see the chat, they can just instead get a notification on their Discord. There's also a kinship advertisement page where kins can post their kinship advertisement and have people join their kins, and you can also post in the looking for kinship chat if you're looking for a kinship, but make sure to take a look in the kinship advertisement first and look through all the kin to find a suitable kin for you. There's also a trade channel if people want to buy or sell stuff that you can use. Hopefully you'll consider joining this server to bring the community even more together, not just in the game, but also outside of the game.